Hello, today we are going to discuss about the network address or the address used by the devices to be identified in the network. So in this we will learn about the network addresses and their type, physical address and the logical address, and then the different classes of logical address, then IP address representation. So let's first start with what is a network address. A network address is a unique code or a number which is given to each node or device in a network. Or network addresses act as a identifier in the network to identify a device in a network. So each device has its own unique address and it makes easy for the user to communicate within a network. And example of network addresses are a telephone number in a PSTN network and the IP address in internet and MAC addresses used in Ethernet network. These are all the example of network addresses. The next is type of network address. There are two type of network address, physical address and the logical address. The MAC address is a physical address. MAC is media access control, and IP address, internet protocol address, is a logical address. And the MAC address is of 48 bit in length, whereas the IP address are in 32 bit in length. And the MAC addresses are the unique code which are given by the manufacturer at the time of manufacturing a device or which is encoded in NIC cards. Whereas IP addresses are assigned by ISPs, Internet Service Provider, to the device. So the physical addresses are mostly associated with data link layer of an OSI model, whereas logical addresses are associated with network layer of an OSI model. The physical addresses are also known as hardware addresses, whereas logical addresses are known as virtual addresses. And the format of physical addresses is hexadecimal. The MAC addresses are represented in the form of hexadecimal, and logical addresses, the format of address is in decimal, and its range lies between 0 to 255. The example of MAC address is as shown. It is represented in hexadecimal, and the example of IP addresses is shown, which is represented in a decimal. So the MAC addresses are used by many different layer 2 devices. Some are Ethernet, token rings, and the fiber channels. Whereas the IP address is used to identify the different computers and websites on an internet or an intranet. The next is different classes of logical address. The logical address is further divided into the classes, and each class represents its own range of the IP addresses. So class A IP address range from 0 to 126, and the class B range lies between 128 to 191, and the class C range lies between 192 to 223, and the class G IP address range lies between 224 to 239, and class E represent IP address from 240 to 255. So these are the IP address ranges of the each class. Whereas class G addresses are used for the multicast addresses or the purpose of multicasting, and the class E addresses are reserved for the future use. So the class A, B and C addresses are assigned to the devices in the network to access the internet. So they have their own number of network and host bits. The next is the class higher order octet numbers and the network ID and the host ID. So the class A, the first octet higher order number is represented as 0, and the first octet represents as network ID, and the last 3 octet represents the host bits. The next is class B. The first octet higher order number is represented as 10, and the first 2 octets represent network ID, whereas the last 2 octets represents the host bit. And the class C, first octet higher order number is 110, and the first 3 octets represents the network bits, and the last octet represents the host bits. The class D, first octet higher order number is 110, and class E, the first order higher order number is 1111. So these are the higher order number of each class and their network addresses and network IDs and the host IDs. The next is range 127. As we don't use 127 range in the IP addresses, it is reserved for the loopback testing. For example, 127.0.0.1 is the loopback address. So all IP addresses uniquely identify a device in the network. Some IP addresses can't use in the network because they are reserved for some special purposes. So if we want to make the network address, then make all host bits equal to 0. It represents the network address. And if we want to make broadcast address, then make all host bits equal to 1. So it gave us the broadcast address. The next is IP address representation. As every IP address is broken down into 4 sets of octet. Octet is a bit of 8 bits and translated into binary to represent the actual IP address. So for to represent the IP address 192.168.5.2, we use as each value represents the 8 bit. So the 8 bits value is 128, 64, 32, 16, 8, 4, 2, 1. So these are represented by these values. If we want to represent 192 in the form of binary, then add 128 and 64, we get the value 192. So the bit 128 and 64 are set to 1 and the other bits are set to 0, and the binary value of 192 become 11000000, same as 168. The binary value of 168 is represented at by adding 128, 32 and 8, we get the value 168, and the binary representation will become 10101000. Same as the binary representation of 5, by adding the bit 4 and 1, we get the value 5, and we set the value of 4 and 1 to 1 and the other bits equal to 0. Same as the 2, the value of 2 bit is set to 1 and the other rest of the bits are set to 0. So this will give the binary representation of 2. So this is the binary representation of the IP address 192.168.5.2. Same as the another example of IP address, to represent this IP address in the form of binary, the 150.70.10.21. So we add the bit representation of bits by adding the value of ones. As we represent 150 by adding 128 plus 16 plus 8, we get the value 150, and the binary representation of 150 is 100, 1100 and 0. The binary value of 70 is 01000110, and the binary representation of 10 is 00001010, and same as 21 00010101. So this is the binary representation of the IP address 150.7010 and .21. The next is automatically assigned IP addresses. So there are IP addresses that are automatically assigned or dynamic allocation when we set a home network or any device in a network. So 192.168.1.0, 0 is automatically assigned network address, whereas 192.168.1.255, 255 is commonly used as a broadcast address and it is assigned automatically. 192.168.1.1, 1 is commonly used as a gateway addresses. So these are the automatically assigned IP address in the network. So this is all about network address. Thank you.